Thank you very much. Yes, be less boring, they said. So we'll try for 15, 20 minutes to do that. And yes, I'm Jerry. I'm a brand side marketer. I've worked at a whole bunch of these kind of companies, Mondelez, Diageo, GSK. And these days I work for Burger King, or at least I work for the company that owns Burger King, which if you ask AI what all of that would look like in a chaotic restaurant of Burger King, Popeyes, Tim Hortons, Firehouse Subs, this is what you get to. We're not here today to do a big future crystal ball gazing thing, though we can ask ourselves questions like, did AI predict what I was going to wear, or am I in cosplay today? Unclear. We're here to think about what we can do with AI now. And I felt a bit of FOMO talking to some of the other people at the WFA Media Forum, in marketing. Everyone was playing around with AI, trying cool things with AI. And I don't necessarily mean the crazy stuff you put in your advertising, the stuff you put out in the world. I mean in your day-to-day jobs, in when you're writing emails, and when you're preparing presentations. How are you using AI more day to day? People like to say, AI is coming for us, coming for our jobs. I don't think it's coming for our jobs, but it's definitely coming for us to try and think differently about how we work. So I'll take you on a little bit of journey about how myself and some of the guys at restaurant brands have been thinking about AI. We have done some cool stuff out there in our actual marketing. Like we did this amazing thing in Brazil where we used AI to predict traffic jams, and we delivered Burger King burgers to those queues. But we won't talk about any of that today. We'll start with what I thought would be a fun place to start when I was beginning to think about AI, and that's in writing. The last panel, they talked a little bit about how people create AI-written LinkedIn posts. They're pretty awful if you see them, but I was like, why not? I write quite a lot, probably too much. I've written over 100 articles and 1.5 books. So I thought, brilliant. Let's play in that space. Now, if you've never played around with like ChatGPT or something similar, you may or may not know, you can kind of create these things called custom GPTs. So in my company, we have our own enterprise version of ChatGPT. We can talk to it internally. We can upload data. We can upload stuff that we don't want the whole world to see. And ultimately, you can start training your personal GPT to reply in specific ways based on specific ways of thinking. And so I started by giving it everything I'd ever written. There's this platform called Author3 that kind of tracked it all down for me and uploaded it all to the system. And I said, based on how I write, what I care about, what I talk about, help me write a LinkedIn article. And it did write a LinkedIn article. It created an interesting linked article. And what I learned in that experience was that, yes, AI is a very fast reader. You give it 100,000 words and it reads it in 5 seconds. It's a great summarizer. It did pull out a really good report of the things that I was passionate about, the stuff that I would talk about. But of course, it's kind of looking backwards. This is true of however we use AI. It's somewhat hard to use AI to tell us what's next and to give us really interesting opinions on what should come. And to be honest, the output was just kind of slightly awkward and generic. I kind of figured that having trained it that much on stuff that I wrote, I'd have that kind of weird, unnerving feeling I was reading something I wrote. It didn't. It's still like many LinkedIn posts you might stumble upon, sounded very odd, very generic. So I tweaked it quite a lot before I shared it. And so we said, well, actually, how internally in our business could we better leverage this? Could we start thinking, hey, AI is useful, not just for our creative, not just for our media that we're putting out there. And so we took those beginnings, those humble beginnings of that bot, and we trained it on a whole bunch of other stuff. So we took in a lot of either where we had access to detailed documents, where we had access to summaries. We took thinking from things like how brands grow, from the long and the short of it. We took a whole bunch of internal data we have from our MMM, from our econometric campaigns, where we've researched and measured what works for us. And we took our kind of internal Bible of what works in media. We have these 10 brilliant basics, these 10 principles. They're nothing super radical about reach maximization and frequency capping and some more fun stuff like acting like a challenger. And we took all of that, and you can see this sort of weird screenshot here is you can upload a whole load of documents to your custom GPT. You can train it on whatever the hell you like. But it took quite a lot of manual training. So even in creating that, when we started asking it questions, we found it tended to give some slightly weird, slightly random answers. So for quite a lot of the most popular answers, we still somewhat manually tweaked what it would say. In particular, we got it to almost always answer by saying, And hey, if you really want to check this answer or know more, you should contact the media team. And there was a few really, really manual things, like we wanted it to be able to read a media plan. We wanted to be able to upload an Excel media plan into ChatGPT and for it to be able to read it. And that was quite a tricky thing to crack. And when we eventually cracked it on one agency's media plan, when we put another agency's in, it was back to square one. And we learned some interesting things, like in media plans, if you ever have the fun of dealing with them, you often have Excel. The Excel shows what weeks on air you have by being shaded in. And actually, ChatGPT can't read shading. So if you're hoping the ChatGPT could understand your media plan, you have to do some manual things like put X's in every box when you're on air. But it did lead us to this fun fella here, our internal media bot, who we have now scaled around about 50 people in our business. It's still a bit of a trial. And we are a franchisee-driven business, so a lot of my colleagues aren't marketers. They're what we call area franchise leads, and their job is to work with our franchisees in different markets and advise them on what they're doing. And they don't know very much about media or marketing. It's not their day job. So this bot has been really helpful as a first line of defense in kind of encouraging them to ask questions, to think about things. And we've tried to take it to the next level of really starting to assess our media plans. So one of the questions when I first joined the business about a year ago, people would ask me is like, can you look at this media plan and tell me, is it any good? That's quite a hard question to answer if you haven't got any context, if you don't know much about the local market. But we try to encourage our bot to do it. And so I didn't dare quite do a live question, but it's, slightly boring text will appear on the screen behind you. But you can now do that with our bot. You can say, hey, help me evaluate this media plan. You upload the brief. It'll ask you, hey, great, can you upload the media plan? Can you upload any of the strategy decks? Can you give me anything that you possibly can to help me understand it? And it starts thinking about it. And it starts mainly, and what we've trained it on is to think about our 10 principles, to think about what's relevant, to think about whether it aligns with what we think good media is, because that is a slightly subjective topic. It gives you some thought starters, some questions, and eventually it gets right down into giving you some kind of green ticks, red crosses of where you think it's good and where you think it's bad. Now, it's not perfect, and we're definitely not using it as like saying this should produce our media plans or this should be our final decision-making. But it is helping us in terms of, certainly for people who are not media experts themselves, being able to start getting a sense of it. And we did take it a step further, and we've been running quite recently media agency reviews. So in 8 different markets, we have run and changed or kept our media agency over the last 3 or 4 months. And one of our kind of secret behind-the-scenes weapons in doing that was to start to take their strategies, and when you do a big media agency review, we did it in Canada for Tim Hortons. It's a $100 million plus business. It's a whole huge enterprise, and you get countless, the agency puts a huge amount of effort into producing strategies, into producing digital presentations, a whole load of stuff, which of course we read and digest, but you end up with 3 or 4 agencies. It's hard to compare. And the AI was really great in terms of being able to compare some of those things, to be able to show what one agency was doing, what another agency wasn't, where some of the strengths were. We did go so far as to upload our scorecard to it and to ask, how would you score these agencies? But of course, it's doing so on limited knowledge. It hasn't seen the presentation. It doesn't necessarily know everything about it. And the AI was not in any way a final or even involved in our final scoring. But we did find it was really, really powerful in terms of showing us where there were some differences, nudging on some areas where perhaps we should dig deeper. But across those 2 things, we learned a bunch of things. First of all, that yes, the AI does prompt good questions. It doesn't necessarily always have the right answers, but it gets you thinking about some areas where I should dig into that. I should ask the agency more there. I should go back to their presentation and kind of see what they actually said there. It is quite good at kind of highlighting differences, especially, for instance, a part of our pitch process was quite a detailed Excel sheet on like your digital commitments and what will you give us in terms of viewability, brand safety, and other things. And for stuff like that, it's very good at analyzing the differences. It does need quite a lot of training. And attached to that is AI's brilliant willingness to lie, which is, for instance, when we will upload a media plan to our AI bot and say, hey, did you understand that media plan? It will always tell you yes. You need to kind of ask it a supplementary question, such as like, okay, in that case, how many weeks on air have they proposed for TV? And about 50% of the time, it would have no idea. And AI does that slightly weird thing when you ask a supplementary question and it admits it was lying. It's like, oh, yes, you're right. I didn't know that. I didn't read that. Oopsie. It's sort of a cautionary tale. In fact, at the end of my quite long, actually, it took me almost a day to analyze our submissions for our German pitch with the Media AI. So whether it saved any time, we can debate. So hopefully it'll be quicker next time. And at the end of the day, once I had kind of helped train it, helped to understand the different templates, the different documents, I was very happy with the document that it produced. I was very happy with the guidance and kind of the questions it raised. But I thought just to double check, I'd run it again. And on a number of different things in its scoring, it gave quite different scores to the agencies that it did the first time, with no change to the prompt, no change to anything. So we kind of learned that, yes, it's sort of powerful at prompting and guiding and helping us ask more of the right questions. We're quite a long way off a world in which we should just be like, the AI can make all these decisions for us and decide on that. But we did, as a media team, we never get to do the fun creative stuff. Our creative colleagues always get to do that. But we did like the idea of using AI to be more creative. Finally, we said we have a tool where we're allowed to be creative. We can play around it. And we've used it, and this is where the slightly weird name of the talk comes from, in two ways. Firstly, internal. And secondly, slightly more bonkersly, external. So I'll share a bit of this work, and then I think in particular what we learned from doing it. And we're using a whole bunch of tools to do it. We still mainly use ChatGPT because we have like the enterprise version of it, so we're more confident that we can upload our data and no one's using it. We tried using this tool called Pika that you may or may not have heard of. It's a tool that animates, so we do it quite manually. For some of these videos, we've taken static images that we create in ChatGPT and then got the AI to animate it. And then we also used a tool called Splice, which does attempt in an AI fashion. It's basically a fancy Windows movie maker. It attempts to piece all your pieces together. Often you have to do a fair amount of manual tweaking to get it to the right place. And so we were, as a team, I joined the business less than a year ago. We wanted to introduce ourselves as a team to our colleagues, to our franchisees. And so I'll play you. We made a 5-minute video that has a whole section in the middle where we actually explain our strategy and what we do and the role of the team, which is weirdly missing from this edit of the video because I didn't want to share it with you guys. But this was our fun way of bringing to life our team. It does have sound in theory.
To the media center. If you're as confused by this triangle behind me as our AI is when it tries to draw it, fear not, all will be explained. We know media can be a key driver of business and brand growth. And of course, whilst we're building RBI-wide principles, we'll also be working on specific projects tailored to different brands. Seeing how those key areas come to life within the next global toolkits, looking at how media guidelines make sense when scaled down for smaller markets, exploring the role paid media plays in accelerating some of our earlier stage markets, or even helping new franchisees launch for the very first time. We divide our own international map up into the 3 regions, LAC, EMEA, and APAC, and we're working with key regional stakeholders in each of those to ensure we're all joined up. An international media community that's ready to rock and here to help. Oh, and did we mention we're keen to be adaptable and learn what you guys as franchisees ultimately most need and value? Very adaptable. Very adaptable indeed. Super adaptable. Studio Ghibli adaptable. So don't be a stranger. Reach out to your usual RBI contacts and we'll see how we can help. All just another day in the office at the RBI Media Center. A place which sadly does not exist, even though our team and strategy now definitely does.
It's a bit weird, but trying to introduce what is actually a new corporate function to a bunch of people who, for the most part, didn't really care, we found it to be quite an interesting, fun, and exciting way of doing it. And I remember about 10, 15 years ago when I worked at Mondelez, we tried to create a simple, similar video with some very basic animation. I remember it costing us about 25K or something to do. Maybe we paid too much. Maybe you can find people somewhere in the middle of that. But for us, it was a good way of communicating. And I also sort of challenged myself, well, if the AI is, making really boring LinkedIn videos, LinkedIn articles, what would it look like if I pushed it to do something a bit more fun, a bit more creative? And of course, the natural thing to do, especially I guess if you've got a big ego, is to turn yourself into a superhero and create animations of the key points you've been trying to make. So I've been writing for years this sort of column would be overselling it, but occasional posts around digital sense and challenging some of the conceptions in our industry, trying to help us make sense of a lot of the changes in digital, helping us think a bit differently. And I thought this would be a fun way of trying to bring that to life. So excuse the bonkersness of it all, but I think if you look up, actually if you look up into the sky tonight, you know you can actually see Superman hanging from the shard, but he's not the only thing in the air above London today.
Captain, digital sense. Captain, digital sense. The battle starts with banner ads that make you feel immense. Captain, digital sense. From the ad tech alleys to the brandscape skies, he flies with metrics blazing in his pixel-powered eyes. He's not just quick, fake flash or cookie-cutter charm. He's the sense in your signal to calm and the alarm. Captain, digital sense. Captain, digital sense. He punches through the pop-ups that protects your audience. Captain, digital sense. Captain, digital sense. Captain, digital sense. He brings the band to your brand, makes your media make sense. Captain, digital sense.
I mean, we could learn a lot of things about my insanity and mental health from this, but also that I spend, there you go. I spend a lot of time at airports wondering what to do with myself. He's actually sadly not here, and I'm regretting wearing this many clothes in this heat. But it was a fun thing to experiment. Is it totally frivolous? No, actually, I was, well, a couple of things. One, a good friend of mine quite recently commented that the captain is a bit buffer than I really am. That's actually AI bias, because I created the human version of the character first, and then just said to AI, now make him a superhero. And he went to the gym quite a lot. What can I say? You may notice, if you look too carefully, the captain looks remarkably different in almost every image, but that is because AI is actually terrible at consistency. We'll come on to that. But we didn't, the episodes are like 5-6 minutes long, which, you know, maybe too long for a TikTok generation, but they tackle quite interesting, says the media man, topics. Like there's one which is all about the programmatic, the media waste multiverse. The second episode is all about the programmatic waterfall. If you've never talked about the programmatic waterfall, it's when you have $1 at the start and you end up with about 30 cents getting to your partners at the end. And it does it through the medium of a real waterfall. So we talked about measurement, we talked about media waste, we talked about the fundamentals, we talked about attention. We had a lot of fun doing it, and this slide is deliberately slightly distorted because it reveals some of the challenges you get with AI. It's quite difficult to be consistent. By the time however hard you try and train an AI, and I'm sure it will get better, to answer things the same, to show things the same, it's always quite different. The more you ask in a conversation the same questions again and again, the more confused AI gets. So I was trying to create these slides, and by this stage, it was really showing me loads of headlines from previous slides and basically just giving up on me. It can be frustratingly slow. You know, at the moment, I'm sure it will get a lot easier, but that's frame by frame produced, and each frame takes a minute or two for ChatGPT to spit out, and then you have to animate it. But you know, if you've got a lot of spare time on your hands waiting at airports, it's perfect. Still a bit manual, but for me, the main message I like to land is it's fun to be experimenting. So across all of these things, I'm not sure I've entirely cracked the right way for AI to help us in our jobs. But my challenge to you is if you're not already trying to help in some way, to get out there and have a play. Like, you don't have to have the enterprise ChatGPT. You can just go and use the public one, or you can use other AI topic services do exist. Perhaps if you're writing a program, if you're making a presentation, if you're writing an email, just start by thinking how this stuff can help us and learn along the way all the stuff it's really crap at. because it isn't good at a lot of the things we want to do, but it's quite good at some of them. So thank you very much for your time. And yeah, go watch The Captain. Great show. Thank you.